Yeah, I can. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our latest Alabama Workers' Rights Training. My name is Larry Hodge. I'm Community Engagement Coordinator for Jobs to Move America. And first of all, we really like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us for this training. And this one is a really important one to me. We're going to be talking about how to form worker safety committees on your job. Something that I have a lot of experience in from the field and over the years. And I can tell you from working in the field that there's only one thing better than being involved in your own safety, and that is when a group of you join together and form a worker safety committee. And you can advance to the next slide where we're going to be, as always, telling you that this training is brought to you in partnership by Alabama Coalition for Community Benefits. And that consists of the AFL-CIO, Jobs to Move America, National Black Workers Center Project, Adelante, Alabama Workers Center, and A Better Balance. And today from A Better Balance, we have Cameron Dawson as well as Lauren Booth. They're staff attorneys, and they're going to be helping us explain to you your rights to a safe workplace and how you have a protections to form a worker safety committee on the concerted activities. We're going to go more in detail into that later. And also, as usual, my friend and cohort Charles Crooms is joining us today. And I would like to just welcome everybody, and we're going to go ahead with that and get started. So in the next slide, there's a quote, and it says, the only way to solve safety problems is to have workers controlling the process. I first saw this statement while taking a training course at the TMC, or the Tony Mazzocchi Center. That is the Health and Safety Training Department for United Steelworkers, and they provide grants and safety education for the steel workers, and actually they're providing this grant as well. And Tony Mazzocchi, he was the Vice President and Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers International Union. He's also accredited to being one of the leaders of the modern day health and safety that we now practice in this country. And he also helped form OSHA. And I just wanted to bring about the attention to that, but that's a really important one because, again, I've been in the field for a long time, and I know that workers controlling their own safety is the best way to go. And if you go back to October, when we had our Blame the Worker Safety training course webinar, it talks a lot about why it's so important for workers to control the process. And moving to the next slide, the agenda. Of course, our agenda, as always, is our welcome and introduction. Then we're going to look at what's the purpose of a safety committee and how do you go about starting it? How do you form a worker safety committee in terms of what steps to take and what are your rights in the workplace? There's going to be a call to action. And finally, we're going to share some information on some of the resources that are available to you to help you enforce your rights to a safe workplace and to protect you in your concerted activity of joining and forming a worker safety committee on your job. And then the next slide, the scope of this training, purpose of it is to educate workers, again, on the importance of taking responsibility for your own safety and to train you on how to join together and build a safety committee on your job, and where you have voices can be heard. We want to train you how to build your safety committee and manage them in a way that your committee will last even through management changes. If you think about it, everyone working in the field knows that oftentimes supervisors change, plant managers and site superintendents change, and all of those things can change. But if managed and ran the correct way, in the right way, your safety committee can last even through all of these type changes. And that's one of the things we're going to make sure we try to make sure that you establish it in a way that it can last through these type changes. In the next slide, we're going to go ahead and get started with what is the purpose of a safety committee. And one of the key things is to establish communication between management and the employees. And I can tell you from experience, and again, you go back to blame the worker safety programs training that we did in October. Oftentimes, workers are reluctant to speak about or report safety concerns, or even to report injuries on the job. And usually that is out of fear of retaliation. And what we have by having safety committees, what it does is help us facilitate management and worker collaboration around safety issues. Another one is to increase safety awareness. And the next one, identifying safety hazards and safety awareness actually go hand in hand, because if you can't identify it, if you're not aware, you can't identify them if you're not aware of them. And hazard recognition has to come into play. So these two actually work hand in hand, because oftentimes in a safety committee, you're taught how to recognize hazards, and that is real key. That is key. And that's what this training is going to do, is to help provide that kind of training for you. Also, to perform safety inspections. That's one of them. We're going to add a few slides in, because it's really important that you understand that is one of your activities and one of your responsibilities as a member of the safety committee. And facilitating safety meetings and drills also is some of the things. And I want to make sure that you understand that this training is only an hour long, right? And there's a lot of things that we just simply don't have time to go into detail with, but we intend to have follow-up trainings to make sure that you fully understand all the many different activities and responsibilities to work with safety committees. And this one is basically just to show you how to set it up and give you a brief introduction to it. And then the next slide, how to form your worker safety committee. So one of the things you want to do is determine the size of your safety committee, identify committee leaders, decide member composition, and establish a committee charter. You want to set up and conduct meetings and review your progress. So we need to clarify that normally management has to be involved, okay? You have to have management involved, and we recommend that you make sure that you have met though, and started to form your worker safety committee. Have a good idea as to exactly how you want to do it before you bring this to management, because we need to have everyone and working in a concerted activity. You want to have a group of people as opposed to one or two to take this to them. And you also have to have permission from management to hold the meetings, because you're going to do this during work hours. And so you want to make sure that management is on board. Otherwise, people don't get paid. So another of the things is whether or not it's going to be a worker only or worker management safety committee. And again, you want to make sure if you're in a plant or a manufacturing facility, that management has to be involved. One of the things that we were doing was speaking with some of you workers in different plants who already have a safety committee set up, but they feel that they are not part of it. And we've had that reported to us by many workers. And so we wanted to start a safety committee with you all, just to sit down, a place to where we can come together and discuss safety concerns and so forth, and how we can find some solutions. And that way we can start to build our committee, and when we go to management, to make sure that they include us in the process. But also subcommittees are oftentimes a part of a worker safety committee. You might have people who are assigned to do specific things like site inspections on a daily or a weekly basis in the plant, or to inspect their area and make sure that they document everything and report it back to the safety committee and the safety managers and such. So there's a number of things that safety subcommittees can accomplish, and such as trend analysis and so forth. So these are some of the things that we're going to talk about, and you want to make sure that you cover when you are forming your safety committee. And in the next slide, excuse me, in the next slide, when identify committee leaders. Now, when, next slide, please, we're moving to identifying committee. Yeah, there we go. So when setting up your safety committee, you need to identify who will lead it, okay? And that is the chairperson. Normally, the chairperson is the one who coordinates and conducts committee meetings and communicates information between management and the committee members. And you always want to have a vice chairperson who maintains continuity in committees, and steps in to have the safety committees when the safety committee chairperson is not there. You also want to think about holding an election to elect these people in these different positions. And what that does is allow everyone in the committee to participate and have a voice in it, okay? And it's a best practice to choose an employee to be chairperson who is not the manager or a safety and health professional, like a safety manager in your plant. Also, you will always have a secretary, and for some reason that always fell on me when I was a member of the safety committees. Recording secretary maintains the records and distribute meeting minutes and take the minutes in each meeting and reports to the management. And they say you must have good writing and organizational skills, but I don't know why they chose me every time. Moving to the next slide, decide member composition. Again, you want management represented, but it's really important to make sure that you have your committee formed and have met about this before you go to management. It's ideal to have a mixture of employees and management, and you want to make sure that the employees, your safety committee is diverse. So you want to make sure that you have someone that's representing each department. For instance, when we had safety committees being in construction, so there were carpenters, there were laborers, electricians, so forth, that was on the safety committee. In a manufacturing plant, you might have people from painting or the assembly department or welding and such as that. You want to make sure you have someone that represents each one of these departments, because no one knows your safety hazard and the things that should be or should not be, or that are safe or unsafe in your particular field than you. You know, as a scaffold builder, whenever we did the safety inspections, I was always paying very close attention to the scaffolding because I had the experience, I had the training, I had the certifications, and I did it every day. So I knew exactly what to look for. And it would be the same with yours. You know, you are the experts in your particular field, not us. There should be a balance between the number of committee members representing employees and management. Of course, you don't want it to have it too one-sided either way. You don't want to have too many or to push for too many workers and as opposed to the managers and so forth. There needs to be a balance that would be struck there. Establish a committee charter in the next slide. And that's safety committee charter, and it states your overall purpose of your safety committee, the frequency of the meetings, and the member responsibilities and expectations, and all of that. We're all familiar with charters, which just basically lines out what exactly this safety committee is designed to do, what you accomplish, what it's designed to accomplish, and also to keep up with those. In the next slide, you want to learn how to set up and conduct meetings. So you want to develop a schedule, number one, and they recommend that you develop a schedule right up before at least a year out, and that plans every meeting and everything that you intend to do. You want to make sure that management knows when you're planning to meet, and the only way you can do that is to make sure that you have a schedule. And the time it allows your organization to shift tasks and other working responsibilities. For instance, on the days that we did safety inspections, we call them safety walk downs because of the way the plant was situated. When you take a group of people away from the task, the daily task, then somebody has to go and replace them in order for everything to continue to function. So everything has to be working hand in hand. And it's important that management is on board and that they are comprised of all this. And the only way you can do that is to make sure you have a schedule set up. In the next slide, committee meetings. Now, meeting schedules, again, you want to develop and follow meeting schedules to identify the frequency and location of the meetings. It's very important. You want to schedule committee meetings during paid working hours. No one is asking you to take you away from your own time to do this. This is something that the employee, one of the employee responsibilities actually, okay? You want to allocate the appropriate amount of time, and that oftentimes depends on how large the job is or how big the facility is and such as that. And you want to make sure that when you want to allocate the proper time for employees to attend meetings and carry out the assigned action. And again, you know, if you're having a safety inspection, oftentimes it's going to be dependent on how large that job site is. That determines how long it's going to take to do it. And so you want to work with management on that as well. And you always want to make sure that if a person is not going to be one of the chairperson, co-chair, or the secretary is not going to be there, or one of the others, you want to make sure that you have a replacement for that person so that everyone can still be represented in whatever task at hand that you have, right? And in the next slide, we're going to talk about meeting agendas. So you want to create a committee agenda before each meeting, of course, and they ask that you circulate that to all the members of the committee at least 48 hours in advance, so we want to have a chance to look over it and know what we got on this week's or this month's agenda. So make sure that the items discussed are relevant and add value, and having a solid agenda always helps to direct the meeting and have it distributed prior to the committee meeting helps as well to ensure a successful meeting. Some of the things that you will go over on that meeting agenda always is old business, and that would be the minutes from the last meeting, status of assigned tasks. For instance, if there were things found in the last safety inspection, when we document that, we set a time that these safety hazards should be corrected. So during the meeting, you want to look back and see what is the status of those, or if someone has been instructed to inspect something or give a report on it. You want to always monitor the status of your task. Progress of established goals and objectives, target date revisions if needed. So again, when you do a safety inspection, hazards that are found, you will give a certain date or a length of time that you feel that those particular or that particular hazard should be corrected. During the meeting, you want to make sure that you monitor those, because if you go in 2-3 months and the same hazard still exists, then we have a problem, because what that does is put people at risk every day. You want to look at the number of accidents, number and type of incidents reported since the last meeting. It's very important to make sure that you always monitor and know exactly what's going on, and study, look at those trends, because it said that, you start off with the small incidents and you get so many of those, eventually you'll have a fatality on the job. That's what we were always taught. You want to look at significant cases, including corrective actions and suggestions. Again, you want to look at accident trends. Make sure you monitor those. Effectiveness of implemented accident prevention efforts. And under inspections, you want to look at, again, completions of safety inspections performed, significant findings, always, corrective actions, responsible persons, and timeline. And under new business, always look at the safety suggestions and improvements, new safety procedures, equipment, and other items of interest, and new safety goals or objectives. And under the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about safety inspections. And that is one of the activities that falls on every safety committee. So normally when you have the big one, so you might have, let's back up, you might have people, again, assigned to doing inspections daily or weekly in the plant, or in the plant that you work in, or on the job site. But normally the safety committee comes together with management, with safety managers, and each one of the employees that are representing each one of the different departments, and do at least a monthly inspection of the entire facility. We called it the or safety walk down, because the plants were situated, they're like 13, 14 stories high. And so what we would do is everybody would go to the very top, and you would walk down and do inspections of each floor, each department, each job that's in process. And that's the way we would perform a safety inspection. You want the committee to tour the entire facility, and you always want to make sure that you're taking photos of all of the safety hazards that you find. Ensure that the safety committee members are familiar with all the areas of operation. Again, that's how you accomplish that, is by having someone from each department represented in the safety committee. You want to record, or you want a record of problem areas and committee recommendations and deficiencies will be recorded and provided. And what we would always do is take photos. You want to take photos of everything. If there's an issue, you want to take a photo of it. That way, when we go back and review it all, we can assess it, rate that hazard, and come up with a date that we feel that should be corrected. And on the next slide, we're going to look a little bit at for the safety inspection. Sorry, my phone beeping. So we're going to look at, I always talk about the construction industry because that's where I came from and that's what I was used to. But this one, I chose this photo, and it's kind of exaggerated, I think, because so can you spot the hazard? It's very important to be able to recognize the hazard. So when looking at this photo, what you see in the background of these containers, some of them are paint, and you have adhesive. So these very well could be flammable liquids in some of them. And that piece of equipment right there is what they call a grinder. So that grinder, and its purpose is to grind down imperfections on metal, in particular. And when you grind metal, it creates sparks. So when I say this is kind of exaggerated, because who would set up a grinder in front of a storage shelf in that manner? But it's important that you are able to recognize these hazards now. So some of the hazards that you would encounter, for instance, in a manufacturing facility, might be slippery floors and walkways or open holes in floors, which was one of the things that me as a scaffold builder always had to make sure of on a job site. If there were any open holes in the floor, it was our responsibility to cover them so people wouldn't fall through them or trip and injure yourself and so forth. Other tripping hazards like hoses, piping, extension cords, anything that could create a hazard or a tripping hazard are some of the things that you would note and list during your safety inspection. Poorly lit areas. So that's one that, for instance, I talked about electricians walking down the plant or being involved in the safety committee that I was on. They would be responsible for making sure that all areas were lit properly. Loose handrails or guardrails, again, that was one that fell on the carpenters because all handrail systems had to be up to code, and they had to, every drop off or area that there was a potential fall hazard had to be protected by handrails or guardrail systems, and we had to do that. Dangerously piled up materials, supplies, or equipment, and this is just basically dealing with general housekeeping. Okay, and that's really important because many of the incidents and injuries that occur on job sites is due to just poor housekeeping, which is an easy fix. And is one of the things that all facilities really stress that you make sure that you do. So all of these hazards, as you find them, they're then photographed. And normally you would go back to an area, a conference room or so forth, and you would sit down and you would review all of the findings. Okay, you would document it. You would make sure that you have rated the hazard. If there was something that that presented a risk of extreme or injury or bodily injury or even death to someone, these things had to be addressed immediately. Okay, so you would make sure that you plan solutions, how to eliminate that hazard, how to mitigate it or protect yourself from it. If there was an issue where simple PPE would be sufficient. That takes us into another area that we'll talk about later. That is the hierarchy of controls, where PPE being the lowest on the totem pole in the hierarchy. But again, this is only a 1 hour training course, so we don't have time to really go into all of that. But you want to plan solutions and give a time frame that they should be corrected, and all of that again is accomplished when once you get all the information, you go back to an area where everyone is present, everybody in the safety committee, the safety managers, management, and so forth, and you sit down and you make sure that you come to an agreement as to how you're going to deal with these safety hazards that you just found during the inspection. And on the next slide, so you want to review your safety committee's progress always. You have to always review where you are to know whether or not you are accomplishing the goals set forth for this committee. And you got to make sure that that the committee is doing what it was designed to do. And if you're not reaching your set goals or objectives, then you need to make changes. And again, by working together, we can accomplish all of this. And this is just an introductory training session, okay? Into forming a worker safety committee. We plan to have others. And because there's so much more to cover, you simply just can't do it in an hour. I would like to invite everybody back for a more in-depth and detailed session at a later date. And so I hope that you learned something about the actual formation and the duties carried out during the worker safety committees. And if you have any questions and would like for us to help you, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we're going to be giving you that information in the before we wrap it up. But we also want to remind you, and I'd like for everybody to know that you have protections to do this, okay? And that's one of the things that causes people to be hesitant or reluctant to report safety concerns, is because they feel like that they they don't have the protections, and that the company can basically do or retaliate against you for doing so. And it happens. It does happen. And we want to make sure that you understand it. That's why it's so important to work in groups and concerted activity. So worker safety committees are protected under the National Labor Relations Act, NLRA. And the NLRA covers most workers, regardless if they belong to a union or not. And we can't stress that enough, because oftentimes, especially here in Alabama, people feel that because we are a right to work state, that the company or the manufacturer, whomever you work for, actually management has a right to do, or that they can do, and retaliate against you in any way they want. But that's not true. And you don't have to belong to a union in order to have the protections of the National Labor Relations Act. And workers who engage in health and safety activities can be protected under the National Labor Relations Act under concerted activities. And that's when two or more people band together, okay, to help improve their working conditions. It's the same as forming a union, when you band together to improve your working conditions, your pay, there, and other working conditions on the job. So is health and safety. That's one of the protections. You have a right to join with your workers and form worker safety committees, and you can be protected under the National Labor Relations Act. We wanted to make sure that we pointed that out. And so the best way to act is in concerted manner. When there's more than one or two of you, the more the better. And if you're acting as the spokesperson for the group, you want to make sure that others are willing to back you if needed. And this concept of concerted activity is not limited to workers who belong to a union. Again, you don't have to have the protections of a union contract to exercise your rights under National Labor Relations Act, because you are protected from retaliation of the employer. And I think with that slide, I'm going to turn it over to Cameron or Lauren. I'm not sure which one is going to take it, but we thank everybody.
Hi, Larry.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry. Hi. As Larry just mentioned, my name is Lauren. I'm a staff attorney located in Montgomery, Alabama, with A Better Balance. Our mission at A Better Balance is to ensure that workers can use the power of the law to care for themselves and their loved ones without risking their health or their paycheck. I will be talking about a few federal laws that can protect you when you speak up about hazards in your workplace. I'm going to go to the next slide here. Those two laws are the National Labor Relations Act, also called the NLRA, and the Occupational Safety and Health Act, or the OSH Act. I just want to make sure to be very clear, you see on the bottom of our screen, that today we're not giving legal advice. This is just for informational purposes only. And at the end of this legal presentation about these laws, we're going to provide some resources in case you have further questions or you need some additional assistance. So let's get started here. Okay. So first up, we have the NLRA, the National Labor Relations Act. Oh, it's a mouthful. This was enacted in 1935, actually. The purpose was to protect the rights of employees and employers, to encourage collective bargaining, and to stop certain harmful practices. So under the NLRA, employees have certain rights to join together to improve their wages and working conditions with or without a union. Again, emphasizing that it's not just people in unions, people who are, even if you're not in a union, you're still protected under the NLRA. NLRA covers most private sector employees, manufacturers, retailers, etc. But there are some employees that are excluded, unfortunately. Those are federal, state, and local government workers, some agricultural laborers, and some independent contractors. So you'd have to look and see if, as an employee, if you are covered under the NLRA. Okay, the next slide here. Okay, and as Larry already mentioned, kind of touched on the idea of concerted activity. Workers that engage in this concerted activity are protected under the NLRA. And concerted activity is defined as when two or more employees take action for their mutual benefit or protection regarding terms and conditions of employment. Okay, so a single, as Larry said, it's, okay, more the merrier, but a single employee can be engaged in concerted activity if they're acting on the authority of other employees, by, bringing group complaints to the employer's attention, or trying to induce group action, or seeking to prepare for group action. Some types of activities that you can be engaged in for mutual benefit or protection, it's, for your health and safety. So as we were talking about, the worker safety committee, and discussions about maybe pay or improvement of conditions of employment. Those are all kind of examples of concerted activities. And again, a worker safety committee is a perfect example of what a concerted activity would be. So under the NLRA, we're going to talk briefly about some of the protections that are guaranteed. Under the NLRA, employees cannot be fired, suspended, or otherwise penalized for taking part in a protected group activity, such as a worker safety committee. If an employer retaliates, so if they do any of those things, like fire, suspend, or otherwise penalize you, you're in this engaged in this concerted activity, you can file a unfair labor practice charge under Section 8A3 of the NLRA against your employer with the NLRB, which is the National Labor Relations Board. I just want to highlight again, within 180 days of when the retaliation occurred. So 180 days is roughly 6 months. So again, star that again, you have about 6 months if you believe that you've been retaliated against and you want to file this charge. Want to highlight that when you're filing a charge with the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Act, it's really important to gather all of your information. You need to have kind of these documents ready to go when you're about to file your charge or complaint. They might ask, simple things, your name, address, phone number, the name and address and phone number of your employer. If you know like how many employees work there, you want to give like a description, have that written down, maybe a short description of the events that you believe were discriminatory, or the actions they took against you that you believe was retaliation. Give a time frame, when did these events take place, and why do you believe that you're retaliated against? If you're not acting in a group, there might be protections. If you speak up to your employer about your concerns under another type of law, which is the Labor Management Relations Act. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to really delve into that today, but you can find more information about these types of laws on alabamaworkers.org. And that can also give you some more background on the NLRA and that type of information. So I will now pass it on to my colleague, Cameron Dawson, who will explain more about your rights, your federal rights, um, in regards to health and safety. And I will pass it on to her right now.
Thanks, Lauren. And like I said earlier, my name is Cameron Dawson. I'm a staff attorney at A Better Balance's Southern office, which is located in Nashville, Tennessee. But we also help workers who have concerns about their health and safety in the workplace through our free and confidential legal helpline, as well as doing these Know Your Rights trainings with our partners here at Jobs to Move America. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of information about the Occupational Safety and Health Act, or the OSH Act, which Lauren had previously mentioned, that is one of those federal laws that workers can use when they have concerns about the health and safety of their workplace. And just a little bit more background about this law, it was founded just to share, or it was founded around 1970 in order to protect workers from being killed or seriously harmed on the job. And it really does allow for some workers to contact OSHA, either their state department or a federal contact, in order to share concerns about the workplace. And there are separate standards regarding certain industries, including manufacturing and agricultural industries, but there is the general duty clause that your workplace needs to be free and clear of safety, free and clear of health of hazards in the workplace. And those can be recognized hazards that are likely to cause death or physical harm. And the OSH Act does cover most private sector employees, some federal government employees, as well as state and local government workers. So if you do work for a private business like New Flyer, or a larger business like a government employer, you are likely to be covered under this OSH Act. Next slide. So under the OSH Act, you do have the right to a safe and healthful workplace that is free of known dangers. Your employer needs to be providing you with training that's in a clear language in order for you to understand what those hazards are, the methods to prevent the harm, as well as those worker safety committees that Larry had previously mentioned. And your employer also needs to provide you with tools and equipment in order to do your job safely. This can include some guards for your eyes to protect you against hazardous chemicals or equipment on the job, as well as safety guards for breathing or personal protective equipment such as PPE during COVID. Now, you can also be entitled to receiving information about hazardous chemicals, but these are just some of the key protections that the OSH Act does provide for workers. Now, in order to obtain access to safety and accident reports, you can contact your employer about that, or HR manager. Your employer is required to keep these records on file at the job site, but you can also, if you find that you're not able to have access to these documents, or your employer is retaliating against you for asking questions about your workplace, you can file a complaint asking OSHA to inspect the workplace for you, or on behalf of a group of workers that you are also concerned with. You can also, if you believe you've been retaliated against, you can also file what's called a whistleblower complaint with OSHA. Now, I will say that you can also talk to organizations that can file a complaint on your behalf. And that could be organizations like Jobs to Move America, or some other local organizations that we're partnered with in Alabama. If the risk persists, though, and you've tried to talk to your supervisor before filing a complaint, you may be able to contact OSHA to see, what your rights are and what the next course of action is. But these complaints in regards to health and safety can be anonymous. So you may still need to gather some documentation or pictures in order to file the complaint, but the whistleblower complaints do need to be filed with your name. An assigned complaint does work better, but it's not necessary. And on the next slide, we're just going to show a quick video of how to file a complaint. Well, the audio is a little down, but I can tell that you're going to see this website here, and you can scroll through to see where you can file a safety and health concern. You can do this online as well as by mail or phone. And then you can also see that there's a place to file a whistleblower complaint. And I'll share the phone contact with OSHA in Alabama later on in this presentation. But the whistleblower complaint does have about a certain timeline to file those complaints. Usually it tends to be about 60 days or so, but you want to make sure that you're taking that from the date that you believe you've been retaliated against. And it is the same where you can file it online or by mail or phone, but it is going to ask you just some key questions about what you believe has happened, what concerns do you have in the workplace, and why you believe you've been retaliated against. So we'll definitely save this video for folks to watch again, but we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of those relevant timelines. And I'm sorry, it's not 60 days, it is 30 days. So the whistleblower complaint has about a 30-day deadline, while the safety and health complaint does not have its own deadline. So if you have concerns, you can talk to OSHA as soon as it's practicable, or as soon as you've talked to your supervisor and they've not been able to correct the hazard. Can you go to the next slide? And here's just a recap of the OSH Act. Again, these are both federal laws that protect you for raising concerns about safety and hazards in the workplace. The OSH Act does cover most employees, including federal workers and those that work at most businesses. And you can contact the state agency if you have concerns about some hazards in your workplace, or you feel that your employer is not trying to correct those concerns. Just to say again, important things to remember is to try to talk to your employer first and raise those concerns before filing a complaint. And you can file this complaint confidentially, and OSHA will investigate on your behalf. Or you can also contact an organization or have a person submit the complaint on your behalf. That is a representative of that concerted activity. Now, a signed complaint is most likely to result in an on-site inspection, but it is not required. So this is just a brief recap of the information over the OSH Act. And then on the next slide, I'm just going to share some contact information. So as you can see, you can contact OSHA at their website, osha.gov, to enforce your rights, or you can give them a call at 1-800-321-6742. And that does apply for workers in Alabama, as well as Mississippi and across the South. In terms of the National Labor Relations Board that Lauren had mentioned earlier, you can see their website for more information about the laws. That's nlrb.gov, or you can give them a call at 1-844-762-NLRB. And again, we know that this is a lot of legal information, and it is a lot to take in, but we're hopeful that you'll be able to contact these resources if you do have questions about your rights. And just before I turn it over to Charles, who's going to talk a little bit more about our call for action and how you can use your voice as a worker in Alabama to promote change, I did want to highlight that we have often heard from workers on our free and confidential legal helpline that they have oftentimes gotten points or been penalized for taking absences because they are concerned about their health, or they need an accommodation on the job and they're not being granted that time or that accommodation. So this is, what we've seen with abusive attendance policies, that, it may oftentimes not be just unfair, but it might be against these federal laws like the Pregnancy Discrimination Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Family and Medical Leave Act. And so when you are given points or even docked for your bank of time because you are missing work due to a health reason or a serious medical condition, this can oftentimes lead to disciplinary action, and that can subject you to termination if you receive too many points or run out of time. And so we are interested in helping workers on our helpline navigate these policies and make sure that they know their rights. So if you do run into these issues, whether you're pregnant or you're a caregiver or you have a disability or chronic health condition, please let us know at our helpline, and we'll definitely walk you through that process. So on the next slide, I just wanted to kind of share with Charles some of the opportunities across the South and in Alabama that workers can participate in to use their voice and join the fight for workers' rights. So with that, I'll pass it over to Charles.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm having a little trouble getting my video started here. And thank you, Lauren, as well. And also thank you, Larry. With worker safety, government regulations like the OSH Act, the NLRA, responsibility boils down to employers and employees for providing both health and safety workplace free from recognized hazards that's likely to cause harm or death. These laws cover both union and non-union workers as well. That's a very important thing to remember when you're thinking about forming, or if you need to form, a safety committee in your workplace. Those of us in the service industry and self-employed, or as some folks call it, the gig economy, workers are less likely to have safety committees in place in their workplace. As an employee, being familiar with guidelines that OSHA has in place for worker safety matters. So if your employer seems to not be interested in your safety, and you do notice things in your workplace that can be adjusted or that should be addressed, you have the right and informational tools to form a worker safety committee. By following the guidelines from this training to form and establish a worker safety committee, this would be a solid foundation for worker empowerment in the workplace. And our resident webinar presenter, Larry, he is the resident professional on this subject. So he would be the person to contact with information if you need information on how to form, maintain, and keep. So please use this information and form a committee. And let us not forget that the NLRA protects our voice from any unfair treatment from our employer, especially when they attempt to silence you in an effort to improve your working conditions, like forming a working committee, safety committee. Through worker rights training such as this one, our goal is to inform workers on protections and rights when it comes to health and safety. This information can help you better advocate for yourself and your coworkers. So go to our AlabamaWorkers.org. There's a lot of information on that website that can help you as a worker, information. We have resources, partners as well. And that lends to our call for action, asking you to use your voice to join our fight for workers' rights. We ask you to join efforts to improve your individual working conditions, especially if you see a lack of standards within your workplace. We ask you to use your voice to improve your working conditions. Here in Alabama currently, there are 2 significant labor rights fights being waged. There may be more, but I've seen 2 that have been on the news or that have made national news. And that is with Warrior Met Coal and the Amazon workers. There are ways to get in and join the fight for those workers to help support them. One way can be to meet with your elected representative or write letters to let them know how you feel about your concerns, or to talk with organizations, as Cameron said, to learn about your rights, and also to share your story on AlabamaWorkers.org. And next slide, please. The 2 major labor fights, I'm sorry, not that one, Lauren, the one before that. Thank you. The 2 major labor fights here in Alabama, again, are the miners' strike for a better contract. That strike is in Brookwood, Alabama. That's going to be at the Warrior Met Coal. And the Bessemer, Alabama's Amazon employee fight for a union contract. Support for each effort is needed. Community support can go a long way. And us here that's listening to these fights on the news and hearing about them, we are the community of these workers. Workers do need support for fighting for positive change, and lending your voice will help make that change become a reality. You can help by logging in on the AlabamaWorkers.org website, and we can provide links on ways that you can help. Examples are you can sign a petition, online petition showing support for the Amazon workers, or you can get Order yard signs to be placed in your front yard showing support. In the case of the Warrior Met Coal workers, monetary donation for striking workers is handy, or donations of canned food and water for workers that are on the line striking and do have that reduced salary. We need volunteers to stand up for Alabama. There's a rally February 26th at 4 o'clock at the Bessemer Distribution Center. We're going to be standing at the gate to showing the workers support as they change shift, showing support for them as they fight for a union contract. If you're interested, the address is going to be at 975 Powder Point Road in Bessemer. The shift change will be at 4 o'clock, so we'll try to be there before 4 o'clock. So if you can please join in and help, we'd appreciate it. And again, log on to the alabamaworkers.org website if you're interested in showing support for any of these campaigns, and also links to these campaigns as well, and also to share your story. And I will pass it back to Larry for closing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Charles, Lauren, and Cameron. I'd like to just reiterate Charles talking about the strike and the organizing campaign that's going on in Alabama. These both are really, really important campaigns to labor. It's certainly important to the workers who are fighting for change in their workplace. And we would like to ask everyone to please come out and help support these workers. So again, thank you for joining us today. And we'd like to remind you that if you have questions about how to request accommodations, or if you're pregnant or have a disability, paid or unpaid sick time or family leave, or your rights during COVID-19, you can contact the Better Balance. The contact information is, you can call 1-833, expand this, 1-833-633-3222. And that is for free and confidential legal helpline. Or you can contact them online at abetterbalance.org/states/Alabama. Also, Jobs to Move America envisions a South where manufacturing jobs are good jobs and that offer a good wage and benefits. And the companies commit to hiring goals for marginalized communities, including women, people of color, and people who face barriers to re-entering the workplace. And you can contact Jobs to Move America at 205-612-3722. We also have a website. It's going to be Jobs to Move America, Facebook page, Jobs to Move America South on Facebook. And we would like for you to log on and please like and follow us there for all the updated information about our training, these organizing campaigns that's going on, and just up-to-date information about what's happening with the struggle and our fight for justice and equity in the workplace. Also, we would like to remind you that Adelante Alabama Worker Center unites day laborers, domestic workers, and other low-wage and immigrant workers and their families in the Birmingham area to defend their rights, promote their dignity and justice for all. And there's a QR code there you can scan and get all of this information. Again, we would just like to thank you all for joining us today and remind you to please stay tuned for information about our next training, which is going to be on the 3rd Thursday of March. And that training is entitled, What Causes Workplace Injury, Illness, and Stress? And there we're going to delve into the causes, the root causes of the injuries on the job. And I'll just leave you with this: hazards cause injuries. Thanks, and everybody have a great day. We really do appreciate it. See you next time. Bye-bye.